started Base Power. You were previously at head of manufacturing at Anduril, and for that, you were building Starbase up in Brownsville.
I learned a ton. I worked directly for Elon for a lot of that time and very, very closely with his leadership team. A lot of our culture owes a bit of gratitude to the SpaceX culture.
I think it would be good to define like what Base Power does.
My co-founder, Zach, and I started the company about 3 years ago in 2023 with the vision really to, we say, is fix the grid. So we design and manufacture batteries, and then we also sell power.
Justin, welcome to the show. Welcome to We the Builders.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is great.
You know, when I first met you at like the Austin Deep Tech dinner I was doing, had I known, you know, you were starting this company and you were leaving Anduril, and I would have figured out a way to convince you to let me into the round.
Well,
which was
unfortunately that is past now.
Which is probably oversubscribed. Which was probably already oversubscribed, right?
They all have been, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you started Base Power. You were previously at head of manufacturing at Anduril, and for that, you were building Starship Base. Is it called Starbase now? Yeah, Starbase up in Brownsville, right? Were you one of the first four people there?
Yeah, it was. I was leading the manufacturer. There's like 2 sites there, roughly. Yeah. It's expanded an enormous amount since I left, but there's a launch site and a production site, and I was leading a good bit of the production site down there, and it was like overgrown field when I showed up, and all the way till there was the Star Hopper, the sort of looked like R2-D2 or sort of like a trash can that was that did the first hop and tested out a bunch of the Raptors and tank systems and all that. So yeah, it was wild. It was not called Starbase then. It is now actually an incorporated city in Texas, but it was just good old Brownsville, Texas back then.
Like, what does it take to build an entire city? Like, how did you guys go about it?
Yeah. So
what did you do for entertainment? Fly back to LA? Like,
it was basically just work all the time. I'll be clear. I didn't lead the like city build out, or at least that happened mostly after I left. But like I was in a meeting with Elon. This is like Q3 of 2018, and it was the meeting where he basically made the decision, and along with the team, on moving from the carbon fiber version of the tank, the carbon fiber architecture that was being built in the Port of Long Beach, to a stainless steel architecture and built in Brownsville. And it was sort of like, there's a little bit more discussion than this, but to simplify, it was basically like, okay, we're going down to Brownsville, we're going to go build it. Who wants to go? At the time, I was working on Falcon, but my manager, who led a bunch of the team that ultimately built Starship, pulled me in for whatever reason into the meeting. And so it was like, I was like, I'll go. Didn't even know where Brownsville was. I knew where Texas was, but never heard of Brownsville before. Turns out it's on the southern tip, right next to border with Mexico, and it was great. It was like a totally brand new experience. I was quite young. Was given a ton of responsibility, basically, to get us to the first launch vehicle, the Star Hopper that I was referring to, and I learned a ton. I worked directly for Elon for a lot of that time, and very, very closely with his leadership team, and like huge debt of gratitude to all of them and him, who taught me a ton about just like how to build and lead a team, how to organize work, and like just figuring things out on the fly. And it was a ton of fun.
And that was your first job out of college, right?
Yeah, it was at SpaceX. That's right.
What has that taught you about how to take like top talent and give them agency, and how's that informed what you're doing at Base Power now?
Yeah, an enormous amount, honestly. I'd say a lot of our culture owes a debt of gratitude to the SpaceX culture that Gwen and Elon and Mark and my boss Matt and everybody built. So it's like, people can do anything. Anything's learnable. Nobody was born innately knowing how to do mechanical engineering or aerodynamics or any of the technical concepts required for building anything, really. And we try to do that at Base Power. We have a lot of very early career people that we give an enormous amount of agency and an enormous amount of decision-making power to. Obviously, where there's specific either safety or regulatory or other things, we have folks that are experienced. It's not that we only hire inexperienced people, but we hire a lot of relatively inexperienced people and give them either inexperienced in their area, maybe inexperienced in other areas, senior in their career, but they're taking a different path or are more interested in a different problem or whatever. We take that and we give them a ton of responsibility. And what we find is that, assuming we select right in the hiring process, 90+% of people jump on that opportunity and they say, this is awesome. I've never done this before. I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm going to figure it out. And like everything's learnable, especially nowadays with the LLMs. Like you can learn a lot, and I think that people that are most open-minded to sort of that type of adventure do the best at base power, and I like to think also led to some of the success, or at least the responsibility that I was given at SpaceX.
If baseline you assume that anything is learnable, and inexperience doesn't necessarily mean that you haven't worked at all. Like it just means like in this particular area, you don't have years of experience. What are you filtering for then?
When we're hiring people? Yeah, it's what we like to say is it's like if somebody has a graph of their capabilities, the x-axis is time and the y-axis is capability. It's like slope, not y-intercept. Basically, like how quickly can you come up the learning curve on any given challenge? It's really hard to screen for that, obviously, in an interview. I think a few things that are indicators of that, though, for us. One is like something that I'm a huge believer in is you have to be genuinely interested in what you're working on or what you were working on in the past. And so, like, if you're a mechanical engineer, you're like building stuff on the side, maybe a 3D printer in your apartment, you're working on your car, whatever. If you're a software engineer, you built your own app or custom things just because you like, for the love of the game, so to speak. Right? You like what you're working on. And that is an indicator that if you like what you're working on, you're going to work hard at it and you're going to actually genuinely learn, and you don't think about a job as just a job. Yeah. So that's number one. Number two is like demonstrated ability to learn something new. And so we try to ask people about, some opportunity that they were given where they didn't know how to do it, and then they learned, and what was the process by which they learned. And if they tell you, spent nights and weekends researching this because I'm just intellectually curious, back to the first point, that's a good indicator. And like just genuine sort of work ethic. Work ethic goes a really long way. We'll take somebody that works hard almost over anyone that is like maybe highly skilled but doesn't work that hard. Like I think a lot of people screen for skill. We screen for the ability to obtain the skill.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess like you're right. If one way to filter for whether you were really interested in what you were doing was the level of depth that they can go into. Yeah, it becomes like, can they talk about this all day? Like, are we gonna run out of time? Talking about this. Totally. And that's sort of self-revelatory.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, we're also, maybe stating the obvious here, but we screen for people we really love to work with, or we think we will love to work with, right? Like, nothing's worse than having a colleague that you don't enjoy because they're bad in some way, or not engaged, or not a team player, or looking out for themselves, not the company, whatever. And so that's another core thing that we care a lot about is like maintaining a really high talent bar and maintaining a really high culture bar, meaning like, are you in to join, this group of bandits that are on a mission? Are you mission aligned? Are you interested in what you're working on, or the specific subset of what we as a company are working on as a whole, if not the whole thing?
To the point, another point you mentioned there was, which Doug Bernauer, Radiant Nuclear, also told me about, was like his best nuclear engineers are software engineers. Yeah. So like it is like that adaptability and learning capability that he was filtering for, and that seems to be common amongst SpaceX people.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, right. It's sort of the same point, which is that like anyone can learn anything. We have software engineers doing mechanical or electrical engineering and vice versa. On the tech side, we have people that aren't engineers at all doing engineering oriented things. We've got finance people coding apps now with Claude Code. Like it's especially now in sort of the AI era, the ability to both learn and do more than your degree or your past experience would suggest.
This was going to be my next question. Are you seeing more interest from the non-technical people to play a role on the hardware side, or like in the engineering roles? Have you started seeing a shift there?
Certainly, yeah. I mean, we this all just happened honestly in the last few months, but we have adopted AI as fast as and sort of thoroughly and safely as we can. I mean, obviously we could always do better, but I think we've done pretty well at this particular domain, just because my co-founder Zach and I have and our leadership team have really just seen the like enormous impact that it has. Sort of my point about finance people coding up apps now. It's like I was literally just in a meeting a few hours ago where one of the finance guys, relatively new finance guys, like I don't think has done any software engineering or certainly any like hardcore software engineering in his career, like built an app for us to figure out how we plan for future state, capital equipment in the factory as an example. And it was just like, it was a useful tool that got us to the answer, and now is like a plan of record, and we're going to like refer back to that over time, that particular tool that he built over time. And so, yeah, that's an example, but we see it across the board. We have some individuals that do what's called site survey review. Basically, our potential members, we call them our customers, they call them members, submit photos of the side of their home to determine if we want to install the battery, or if we can install the battery, I should say. And it's a relatively manual process today. And this one guy's just like spending nights and weekends trying to automate it and sort of automate parts of his role, which is great. Like that is the type of person, or at least an example of the type of sort of can-do, go-getter attitude that we really want and thrives at the company.
Well, while we've started talking about employees at the company, I think it would be good to define like what Base Power does, and then maybe what are the latest updates. You had a huge round. You're probably from publicly reported sources valued at somewhere between 3 to 5 billion. Congrats on that. But yeah, would love to hear like.
What do we do?
What do you guys do, and then what's happening?
Yeah, totally. So, my co-founder Zach and I started the company about 3 years ago in 2023, and with the vision really to what we say is fix the grid. And what that means is basically build out the modern version of the electric power stack, and that ultimately over time will be across, as my co-founder Zach has sort of coined internally, make, move, store, and sell. So generate power, move it through space, store it when it is not needed or when you have too much, and then sell it to end customers. Today we do the last two, which is store and sell. So we we design and manufacture batteries, and then we also sell power. And I'll explain more about both of those things. So we're based here in Austin, and we're about 400 people now across the state, and actually outside of Texas now, in the Chicago area recently put some press out on. But basically the business is as follows. We design and manufacture batteries. Those batteries get installed by us on single-family homes. So we do all of the logistics, warehousing, and installation ourselves. And then instead of selling them to the homeowner, we continue to own and operate them. So we charge between $0 and $500 or so, depending on where you are in the state, here in Texas or in Illinois. And we own the battery, and we operate it in this distributed power plant fashion. So basically, we sell power to customers. We bill customers every month for their energy in the deregulated markets. And then we use that retail offering as our conduit with which we trade the batteries into the wholesale market. So ERCOT is the independent system operator. Basically, think about it as sort of the New York Stock Exchange of Texas electricity. We buy and sell energy in and out of the batteries in order to offset our costs to support our customers and support the grid. In areas where you can't sell power, so regulated areas, so to speak, both in Texas and outside, we partner with utilities. So same design, manufacturing, logistics, warehousing, and install, but instead of selling power to customers, we sell the capacity to utilities. So utilities basically control our batteries through our software stack to do whatever they want with them, offset their peak loads, do CapEx offset, distribution transmission value, energy arbitrage, whatever they want. They control them, and they just pay us for access to those batteries. So it's a very vertically integrated approach. We, on the hardware and operations side, sort of design through install and field service. And then it's also this like very deep energy markets software, energy trading challenge. And because of the vertical integration, I'd say probably over 50% of our software that we write, or software engineers that are working on software, is for our own internal use, for scheduling trucks, routing our electricians, commissioning the system on site, warehouse management in our warehouse. Like there's an enormous internal software stack that controls all of what I just described. And we'll move into the generate power and into the move power over time. But today we're really focused on the model that I just described. Company's doing quite well. We're very pleased with where we are. Obviously still wanting to grow even faster, but we're all throughout the state now. So we're in a bunch of different regulated markets with regulated utility partners, which we've announced publicly. And then in the deregulated parts of the state, primarily Houston, North Austin, and Dallas area, we are operating, and we're installing. I mean, this number will be old by the time this is published, but we're installing about 100 systems a day right now, and so we've got a fleet of a little over 100 people and running around the state installing these things, which is a ton of fun.
What do you mean by deregulated parts of the state? And like, what's the for people maybe who don't live in Texas? What's the use case for having battery storage in their homes?
Yeah. So regulated versus deregulated first. So deregulations may be a bit of a misnomer. There's a lot of regulations, I can promise you. What it really means is retail choice. So if you're a homeowner or you live in an apartment or wherever in, say, Houston or Fort Worth, you not only can, but you actually have to choose who you buy your power from. The utility, the company that owns the poles and wires in your neighborhood, cannot sell you power, and they can't generate power. They're purely what's called poles and wires companies.
Right.
And that market in Texas, at least, is mostly, there's some in South and West Texas, but like in the large population centers, it's DFW, it's Houston, and it's like, if you're familiar with the Austin area, it's like Pflugerville through Temple and Waco area, like along I-35. So that's the deregulated area. So in that market, again, we sell power directly to the homeowner. We bill them every month for the number of kilowatt hours.
So you're like another utility company.
Yeah.
Right.
It's called in Texas, it's called a REP, a retail electric provider.
Right.
But like if you're a homeowner in Houston and you sign up with us, your electricity bill every month comes from us, not from the utility that owns the poles and wires.
Oh, interesting.
And then in the regulated market, it's much more similar to what you're normally used to. So like here in Austin, the regulated utility is Austin Energy. They're a municipally owned utility, but if you go west of town, it's Pedernales Electric Co-op. These are just names to you, but basically they're regulated utilities. And so in those markets, you can't choose who you buy your power from. You have to buy it from the utility if you want power.
Right.
And so in those markets, again, it's like more of a, call it a B2B or B2B2C sale in the regulated markets, whereas in the deregulated markets, B2C.
In that case, you would be selling to like Austin Energy Authority or something like that.
Exactly. So they in the case of a regulated utility, the regulated utility still sells power at retail. So they bill you for your number of kilowatt hours used per month. And so our deal with the utility is that we give them the capacity in the battery. So for every kilowatt of battery that we deploy, they pay us a certain number of dollars per unit time, basically, to have access to that battery. And that value is a function of the value with which they get out of the battery, minus some bit because they want to use it to save costs for their ratepayers, their members.
Right. Is it in a way? Are you dealing with some of the other providers for them?
Sorry, what do you mean?
In like, so let's say whatever the other two choices are in Pflugerville, would you work with them on?
I see.
Yeah. Right.
We could sort of. We don't today. It's not our model. So the way to think about how the batteries and the retail go hand in hand is when prices, like most of the time, if you're just a regular old retailer, by the way, every retailer is a regular old retailer. They typically don't have generation. The very, very large ones do, and basically none have batteries on homes. But your cost to serve your customer is roughly, I'm oversimplifying here, but roughly the cost of the power in the real-time market. That changes every 5 minutes, basically. And so if you're selling power, if I'm selling power to you, I'm a retailer, you're the customer, I'm selling power to you at, say, 8 cents a kilowatt hour. Most of the time, the real-time price of energy is between 1 and say 6 cents a kilowatt hour, and so my margin is that difference between the 8 that I'm selling to you and the 1 to 6 that I'm buying it from the market at. Right. Now the problem is that when prices go above 8, I'm losing money. I'm selling you something for 8 cents that I'm paying for up to $5. $5 is the cap in the market. It's very rare that it hits that, but it's not super uncommon for it to be 10 cents or 15 cents a kilowatt hour or something. And so that's bad for retailers. So the way that they protect themselves in those scenarios is that they buy hedges. They go buy power, either physical or financial power, in the markets so that their risk of being blown up basically during those high price events, especially if it's high price for a long time and their customers are using a lot of electricity, is they buy these hedges. The problem is that the hedges reduce your margin because you're like taking risk off the table.
Right.
And so our batteries act as a hedge essentially for us, because in the moments where power is higher priced than the 8 cents that I'm just using in this example, we're likely, not always in every area, but likely discharging the battery into the home, turning that home off from the grid, basically.
Right.
Or if the prices are really high, we're actually spinning the meter backwards and pushing power back onto the grid.
Oh, fascinating. So like well, what's the storage like capacity like? But we'll discuss that in a minute. But then if I have one of your batteries at home, then like let's say theoretically for the next week, I'm just still buying 8 cents a kilowatt hour or something like that. Is that the idea? Right?
Yeah, for the most part. So our deal with homeowners is essentially we're going to sell you power at 8 cents. It's all you can eat basically, and it'll always be 8 cents for the next number of years that we have on the contract.
Right.
Regardless of what the actual real time power is.
Oh wow.
And we find that this is compelling to people because they,
of course,
like you as a homeowner don't want to take a bet on what power prices are at certain times, right?
Yeah.
And this is, by the way, this is like the case for most utilities, they do this or they offer time of use varying rates. Anyways, but very rare. In fact, it is as of a number of years ago, not legal to do this in Texas anymore. But you can't just pass through the wholesale price. You can't say, hey, it's $1 now, you're paying $1. That was before the whole winter storm in 2021. That was a business model that some retailers had, and it unfortunately leaves the risk on the homeowner. And so we don't do that, and we can't do that anyways. But yes, you pay the same price, all you can eat, regardless.
But is there like a term limit to it, like for like?
Yeah, with this changes. We have different lengths on our contracts that we can cycle over. But because we have these batteries on the home, we're able to offset those peak costs, and therefore turn around and sell a very competitive retail contract to a homeowner. So we can offer a discount to roughly the average in the market because we have this revenue generating asset and this way in which we're able to offset those peak costs to us, and therefore we can pass some of that along to our members, our customers.
What's the storage capacity like?
Yeah, so today we have you have two options, either one battery or two. It's quite simple.
Yeah.
And one battery is a 25 kilowatt hour system, and two is obviously 50. Your average Texas home uses on the order of 30 kilowatt hours, give or take, depending on size and season and all of that. And so, it's on the order of a day or so of backup. Very, very dependent on usage during the outage. And so the benefit to the homeowners is that they get access to a battery that would otherwise cost them tens of thousands of dollars for either free or nearly free, depending on where they are in the state.
Right.
And the benefit to us is that we get an interconnection onto the grid without waiting in a queue for years. So if you're a grid scale battery developer, you're thinking like you're buying shipping container batteries and buying farmland and then connecting them into the grid. That takes years to go through the interconnection queue, build all the infrastructure, pour all the concrete.
By going directly to houses, you're on the grid.
You're on the grid. Now you have to do it a lot of times. And so we're, as part of the reason we're vertically integrated, is doing this many, many, many times a day. Tens or hundreds of times.
Why was it important to get on the grid? Like, where does that fit in the master plan?
Yeah, I mean, the whole point really is to fix the grid. So you got to be somehow engaged with the grid in order to fix it. I'd say batteries have basically two main. There's a bunch of value propositions for the grid, but there's two very, very overarching ones. The way I describe it. Number one is you can smooth out variability in supply. So your nuclear plant goes offline because it needs to be refueled, or your solar is not producing at night, or your wind is not producing when the wind's not blowing, right? And so there's variability in supply on the grid from sources going on and off for either man-made or sort of just like Earth reasons,
right?
Wind and sun. And so there's variability of supply.
Yeah.
And then on the other side, there's also variability of demand. So like your house or apartment here in Austin is probably not using much electricity, but like when you go home, maybe you have an EV, you plug it in, maybe you're cooking dinner in the oven, and it's hot outside, you're turning on your AC, now you're using a lot. And so there's variability in demand, and it's funny, it's like, it's roughly aligned with human circadian rhythm. It's like most people don't use a lot of energy at night, then they go to work and they're not at home, and so their homes don't use a lot of electricity, and so there's like peaks typically in the morning and the evening.
Right.
And so those two things are varying, and you always have to have supply and demand matched. And so if you don't have a way to store power, it's hard to do that basically. And so storage helps both the supply and demand variability. But the way that we do it, where we put batteries on the edge of the grid co-located with where the load is on the home, we're able to both affect supply and demand. Imagine that you had batteries connected to your solar farm. That's great for supply. Now that solar farm is like producing all night long because the battery is discharging.
Yeah.
But when you shift those batteries all the way to the other side of the grid at the edge at the home, you're able to fix both supply and demand.
Are you seeing consumers be interested in multiple batteries for their homes? Like probably like depending on the size of the home or like how much storage, backup storage they think they're interested in.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. We, it's interesting. This is a feature of our business model because we own the batteries. Our incentives and the customer's incentives are aligned here. We want to put as much energy and power on your home as your home can handle and has space for, and you want that as well because it extends your backup duration. Yeah. Our install costs are not, double if we put 2 batteries on. It's like, marginally more essentially. And so we want to put more batteries in your home.
Right.
There's like a typical practical limit for most homes based on like the side, how big the side yards are essentially. Yeah. It sounds like that shouldn't be a big deal, but it's like these things are roughly the size of an air conditioning unit. And then there's also regulatory limits around from the National Electric Code and others that limit how many batteries and how much storage you can put on homes. But we have some new products coming out that will be larger over time on storage.
Interesting. But okay. Well, people, at least in their farms, would have been doing like, solars and stuff and storing. And so there's limits on that as well?
Yeah, I mean, we could go down a deep rabbit hole of National Fire Protection Agency codes and the National Electric Code and some jurisdictions and all that. We can talk about it.
We'll do it next time.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
So
you talk at length about the National Electric Code, unfortunately.
No, we'll talk about updates because you mentioned you started out in Texas and how there's like these deregulated zones where consumers have to choose who they're buying from, right?
Yeah.
What percentage of the U.S. is that, and what's the expansion plan, right?
Yeah. So deregulation is a spectrum, I should say.
Yeah.
And so the very high level way to think about it is Texas is by far the most deregulated and has the most deregulated meters. And so like the major population centers, basically with the exception of Austin and San Antonio, are deregulated. Houston, DFW, North Austin, Corpus Christi, a lot of South Texas and a lot of West Texas are deregulated. Outside of Texas, the story is a bit murkier. So the independent system operator, called ERCOT, basically the air traffic control, so to speak, of the grid here in Texas. The equivalent body to that in the Northeast is called PJM. You may have seen this in the news.
Yep.
Just a basically organizing body of utilities and markets, and it's a very high level way to think about it. But basically, a number of states in the PJM market and some in the New York and New England market, there's 3 different ISOs out there, are in varying degrees deregulated. So nobody is as deregulated as Texas is, where the utility can't sell power. Right. In Texas, the deregulated utilities cannot sell you power. In, say, Illinois as an example, where we now operate, the major utility in North Illinois in the Chicagoland area is called ComEd. They can sell power, but you can elect to switch away from their power provider. They just still deliver it to you, and then the retailer, there's a different acronym in Illinois, Alternative Retail Energy Supplier, ARES, they supply you power. If you can't tell, there's like, it is a wild patchwork of regulations and market structures in different states, and that makes this business pretty hard, honestly.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking right now.
Yeah, and so anyways, we're operating in Illinois, and Illinois is deregulated, but the utility...
Congrats, that's new, right?
Can,
that's a new expansion?
Yeah. We're super excited about that. Chicago, I actually partially grew up between the Detroit and Chicago areas, and so it's cool to be back home. A bunch of my family's still there. But anyways, so ComEd in this example, they can sell power. They do for the most part, and so it's a little harder to be a retailer there because a lot of people don't even know they can switch because they just sign up with the utility. In New York, as an example, and New Jersey, and Pennsylvania, and Ohio, and like sort of that area of the Northeast, Massachusetts, there are varying degrees of how open to retail competition there is.
Right.
And so you asked what percent. It's like, I think it's about a quarter, if memory serves, of meters, maybe a quarter to a third are in some form of deregulation.
Right.
California is like very restricted deregulated, where it's only for commercial customers in a very specific way. Michigan also.
So California is your last customer in some way.
Well, sort of. So like we're operating in the deregulated markets because we can just go in and highly oversimplify here, but fill out a bunch of paperwork and then start doing our business, right? And that's great. That's
Right.
awesome. That's why we started in
I,
Texas.
I would imagine if you even just stuck to Texas, which is like the 8th largest economy in the world, you would still be a pretty sizable company, right?
Totally.
Like,
yeah.
Even if you didn't expand, you would be like a pretty huge company.
Think about there are a ton of Texas-only or Texas-focused businesses. HEB is an example.
Yeah,
I think
multi-billion-dollar businesses.
Right. It's like only here in Texas.
Yeah,
So yes, we could be a Texas-only company for decades and still build a successful business. And we will continue to operate and expand and grow here in Texas, but we're really focused on expansion outside as well. So, anyways, we can just go into the deregulated market and say like, okay, we're gonna operate there. But in parallel with that, we are in discussions with tens of utilities around the country in regulated markets, whereby we go and sell the capacity to the utilities, as I was referring to earlier.
Right.
What we're doing with the regulated utilities here in Texas.
The capacity.
Those just take longer. They're B2B sales.
So the capacity you're generating from the consumer market or
No, sorry, the capacity in the battery. So we put a battery in your home. You live in wherever, Denver, and we go put a battery in your home. The utility has access to control that battery to support the grid. And
in the regulated market?
In the regulated market.
Right,
This is the regulated market I'm describing. And then you get access to the
battery. So you
battery
can still get the battery, but like the...
Yeah, but again, we as a company-based power have to have a agreement or a partnership.
Oh, so it's like a three-way thing. You just can't install a battery like
there's nothing stopping us from installing a battery for low or no cost to a
the
homeowner.
Business model.
The business model doesn't work without this partnership with utilities. So anyways, we found that utilities are they're all kind of scratching their heads going, how do we support all this load growth? And one of the ways, not the only way certainly, but one of the ways is through our energy storage systems to support that sort of like peak power need, and also to defer or just defer capex upgrades or at least delay the need to upgrade the grid for a new small data center coming into town, et cetera. And so there's this really like compelling use case for the utilities. And so batteries aren't new, but distributed batteries aggregated in using software is relatively new. And so we're fortunate to work with a number of very forward-thinking utilities here in Texas and soon to be outside.
What was the hardest challenge that you had to overcome in the last 2 years or so?
Oh man. Well, I think we've elected to play on hard mode in a lot of aspects of the business. It's like design of very complex and hard to design hardware and software, vertical integration of manufacturing, logistics, warehousing, and installation. There's like hard parts of all of those. I think the thing that has maybe been hardest is just the execution across all of them simultaneously, and the ability to step back, look at the whole picture, and optimize at the whole level as opposed to in the micro. So I'll give you an example. We designing our product, we really care at the economic level about our fully landed cost, basically the dollars that it takes to get a battery plugged into a home on the grid operating, right? And if you're just a manufacturer of batteries, of which there are many, and many very good ones, you only care about your costs to manufacture, basically, so your supply chain and manufacturing transformation costs. We care about that, but also our, how many times we'll need to visit the house for field service, because we service the batteries as well. How long does it take to install? How many can you fit on a truck? Like all these small but important problems. And so we optimize for the whole thing rather than just part of it.
You're becoming the Amazon. You're owning the logistics. You're owning the service and everything end to end, right?
Yeah, but we found that we've sort of need to, because there's not a business. There has not been a business, as far as we can tell, that has had a similar business model, and so there are not service providers at every level of the stack that we can use.
That's
or at least not ones that are as engaged on the problem as we are.
I mean, that probably goes to show why you've gained like so much adoption, right? Because you're serving like the entire stack.
Exactly. It's not, if you're a homeowner and you want a battery, you go to one of the other battery manufacturers that makes a battery.
Yeah, somebody else is delivering, and somebody else is.
And you're on the hook for getting your contractor, and like, then you got to go talk to your utility and do an interconnection agreement. We handle the whole thing. And it's really this sort of like this concept that, I spent a lot of time, and we've spent a lot of time as a company building up, which is everything's a factory. The customer pipeline's a factory. The way in which we pack out the hardware is a factory. The install itself is a factory, meaning like you care about, division of labor, you care about automation, you care about simplifying and deleting processes where you can, you care about reducing complexity and variability. So as I mentioned earlier, you can get 1 battery or 2. That's it. If you want 3, sorry, we're only able to sell 1 or 2, because the more variability in our install, the harder it is to train our electricians and design our pack out kits and all of that. And so if you take this sort of manufacturing approach to basically every step of the process,
interesting.
You're really able to reduce costs, increase speed, and offer honestly a better offering to our members.
Well, we'll share more about that. Like I haven't heard that before. Like you're treating every part of the business building as a factory.
Yeah. I was doing manufacturing before, and so this is kind of my shtick maybe, but like it's like take the customer onboarding experience as an example. So a customer comes to our website, they type in their address, they're like, oh yeah, we serve your area, whatever. From that moment forward, between that and installing of like the electrician's walking away and the install's done, every step of that can be a relatively choreographed process that follows the same principles of building something within 4 walls of a factory. And there's, you may have heard of the Toyota production system. Toyota, the car company, popularized this a long time ago. And it was adopted, across the world in businesses and sort of the,
I don't recall. Can you
Yeah, this is sort of like lean management theory. The point basically is that if you're able to take a relatively complex multi-stage process and break it down into, the factory name here would be stations, an area where a set of work is done, and a specific person that is trained and expert in that area works at that station and then passes it off to the next station. This is Toyota popularized it. It was really like the moving assembly line was even a Henry Ford thing back, a long time ago. Anyways, all that is to say, on the customer onboarding front, this example that I'm referring to, there's a bunch of different steps. We have to get a permit. We have to submit an interconnection agreement with the utility. We have to schedule the customer. We have to schedule our installers. We have to pack out the kit. We have to make the hardware. Each one of those steps is a well-choreographed step with respect to the others that has automations from moving from step to step, and that we have thought of as this manufacturing process. And so if there's a step which is like, say, we need the customer or the member to agree to a date, we really challenge ourselves and say, do we need to do that? Like, the install's all outside, and as long as we ask the customer if it's okay that we're at their house when they're there, like, do we need them to agree to the date, or can we just say, hey, we're actually going to be there, let us know if that doesn't work, right? It's like that kind of thinking on every step of the process that really reduces complexity, cost, and variability that drives pain for customers and just much better customer experience.
So would you describe your role as remove complexity from every operating procedure in the company?
That's definitely part of it. Not my only role, but yes, no, for sure. It's like, and we are fortunate to have, as we were talking about earlier, brought on a just enormously excellent team from all different aspects. The individual who leads our we call it deployments, basically this concept of everything from customer signature to field service and everything in between. Dana, she worked with me at Anduril as a manufacturing engineer, led parts of the manufacturing engineering organization. So she's got this manufacturing mindset, and she owns that as an example. And she has built out what I just described, a lot of that. I definitely can't take credit for a lot of that. Same thing inside of the factory. We've got an individual who led battery manufacturing at Tesla, who's leading that effort. And so we're just fortunate to have some really, really awesome people that that have taken that sort of everything as a factory concept and applied it everywhere in the company.
What's the recruiting sale?
Oh wow!
Some of them you probably knew, but what about?
Definitely haven't known everybody. We're big
and
now.
When I last came to the office, it was 70 people, which was only last year, which is wild.
Yeah, we've grown a ton. We've got.
Is it the same office?
We now have more floors in the same building, but we've hired a lot, both there and in the field. We've got 2 facilities in Houston and 1 in Dallas. We've got folks in El Paso and Chicago now, and so and our factory now in Austin. And so we're spread out a bit just because of the nature of the business.
Yeah, right.
Everybody who is works in an office though works in the office in Austin. The recruiting pitch is essentially do you want to have a large impact on a problem that impacts literally everyone in the world, and is proven to drive the prosperity of humanity. So if you have more energy, the ability to make, move, store, and sell more power in a given country, the country is definitionally
It's correlated
richer
to the
and more
GDP.
wealthy.
Yeah, right.
And so if you want to have very high level impact on a very, very societally critical problem, you should work here. Also, if you want to work with the best people that you ever worked with, work the hardest that you ever worked, and have the most enjoyment and satisfaction out of your role, we're also a good place to join and to learn a lot. As we talked about earlier, it's like, we hire people all the time that are have not done the thing that we are doing. Like, in fact, nobody has worked at a company like Base Power because a company.
And
like
that's
Base
the
Power
most
hasn't
exciting
existed.
part. You get to solve a new problem.
Yeah.
In the process.
You get to solve a new problem and learn a new thing.
Yeah.
And that's a ton of fun. And work with people that really care about what they're doing.
I think like the best companies feel like universities where it's like, you have complete agency, go try these experiments. You have to be successful, obviously, and you have to keep shareholder interest, stakeholder interest in mind. But in a way, it's like this breeding ground, for running a lot of experiments. And the only experiments that come out on the outside that people, value or appreciate are the ones that are successful. But there are a lot of experiments happening internally.
Totally. Yeah. We fail all the time internally.
Right.
We try to not fail externally.
Right.
But we fail all the time internally.
Right.
I mean, that's the process of learning, right? We iterate on hardware designs that don't work out, or software that isn't as effective as we'd like, or manufacturing processes, whatever.
Is there a failure to that you can publicly share that you guys learned a bunch from?
Let's see, publicly share. That's an interesting one. Yeah, I mean, I can share sort of one with respect to kind of like how we operate our install motion. So, we used to work with third-party contractors for a lot of our installs, especially early on as we were sort of getting off the ground and figuring out how things go and all that. And the same thing on the logistics side. So we used to have called 3PLs, third-party logistics firms that would kit, pack, and ship our product basically, and then we'd show up and do the install, or our contractor would. And we sort of learned the hard way that it's really hard to scale and change your process very quickly when you're dragging along another third party, changing how we kit it, or where it goes, or how far we drive from the warehouse, or which stock levels are in which warehouses, and all of that. And so this led us to just say, hey, actually, I think we can do this ourselves. And we brought on some folks that one had done some warehousing logistics before, and a ton that hadn't. And we went and figured it out. And it enabled a much, much better customer experience, right? We were dropping off the hardware on time. We weren't doing dumb things like blocking people in their driveway, by putting the pallet at the base of the driveway. And so it's just all these little things that led to us deciding to take that responsibility on ourselves.
How do you personally, what's your process for getting better at things? How do you continue to stay at the edge?
Yeah, I mean, I've found that, we're fortunate to have a large and very, very awesome group of people at the company. And so nowadays I mostly just learn from people that either just recently learned it and are now experts, or have done it before.
Right.
If that does not exist, or we're hiring someone, I'm trying to get smart about a thing that I don't really understand. It's like, this is going to sound really simple and dumb, but it's a lot of YouTube. Like YouTube, you can learn a ton from.
That's
I'm a very visual learner, especially when it comes to like hardware, how things are made,
I'm the same
or whatever
way.
else.
Yeah.
And so I'll just on the weekends watch some YouTube videos about how whatever it is made or works or whatever. There's that. Very recently the LLMs have gotten good enough where you can ideate back and forth with them on like something that you're interested in, and it will not only give you the facts, so to speak, but also will sort of lead you through the learning process.
Yeah.
And then oftentimes I don't obviously know everything that everyone's doing at the company, especially at our scale now. And so it's like helping to define the problem and then enabling and cheerleading the person that is going to solve it, and sort of observing how they're solving it and learning how they solved it for me to also learn. That's been another way in which I've been able to.
So some of that is that transferable? Because, or is there a power law in problem solvers at the company where you're like, oh, okay, so this group is emerging, and like the most critical problems, once they're done solving one of them, you sort of move them around. Because that's how I only bring this up, because Elon's done this across his companies.
Yeah, we haven't done that really, where you like have a tiger team that goes around and solves the hardest
Right.
problems. Like that might emerge.
It might emerge.
It might
Yeah.
emerge at some point. I've found you just like hire and retain and
Right.
train everybody to be awesome instead of a small group of people.
Right.
And we do have some folks that work better in more ambiguous problem sets, and so we'll give the more ambiguous, like, hey, we think we want to try this thing.
Yeah.
Like, what do you think? And then they'll go off and the individuals will go off and figure out the solution. But no, for the most part, it's like setting up a culture with which people are curious to go find problems and certainly solve, create solutions to those problems is a huge part of what we do.
How do you build and maintain that culture?
It honestly mostly, or at least largely, is on the hiring side, right? It's like only letting in the people into the door that are going to maintain and improve that culture. That's one. Two is having very clear direction at sort of the overarching thesis level, right? What are we here to do? What are our North Stars? My co-founder, Zach, has spent a lot of time thinking about this, and we've got a poster on the wall in the office and in the factory that shows kind of what we're tracking to, major goals throughout the year, and everybody walks by it every day and is very in tune. If you ask hopefully anybody in the office, they could tell you the 3 North Stars and three top level goals that we have for 2026 as an example. And so just keeping everyone marching in the same direction, and then like, frankly, if I'm honest with you, sort of like rooting out issues as they come up, right? If there's a inter-team conflict or whatever else, it's like being very, very ear to the ground and receptive to those is at least my way of doing it, and trying to resolve them very, very quickly. Groups of humans, will ultimately argue about something. We argue a ton, and so like arguing well, I think, is another thing that we try to do quite well, which is, or we attempt to do well, which is having very fact-based and thoughtful arguments about things that matter.
What are some of your favorite questions while like sort of figuring out that culture fit? Tyler Cowen wrote this book on talent, and he has all sorts of interesting and out there questions. I don't know if you're that category, or is it more
maybe
a conversation?
It's maybe less. I don't know, less like cool or interesting to talk about than that, but oftentimes just like I describe how we operate, right? We work hard, first principles, problem solvers. We are genuinely curious about what we do. We treat each other with respect. Like we have a bunch of these sort of cultural points. Just describe it to someone. You go, hey, what do you think? And if somebody's like, I don't know if I like that aspect, or like, ooh, I don't know. Like, I'm not, not sure I can really sign up to having a strong work ethic or whatever. People don't say it like that, but you get the point. It's like, okay, well then this might not be a fit for you. So that's one. And then have they come from an environment where some of these things are celebrated? If they come from like myself came from Anduril and then SpaceX, like it's like, okay, you've at least seen that before. You know how a fast-moving, high-growth company that's highly performant works. In both those cases, and so that's also a helpful sign. And then just like, also, I like having candidates ask me questions. It really gives a sense for like, are you actually curious about what we're doing? Like if they like immediately like, oh, I got a bunch of questions. I was reading your website on the way over here or whatever, and I like don't understand this part of your business model or this part of the technology or operations or whatever. That is a great sign.
Yeah. I guess that's fair. We didn't get a chance to talk about Anduril, but you were head of manufacturing there for about 3 or 4 years, right?
Yeah.
What did you do there? What did you build there? What are like some of the biggest takeaways from that experience?
Yeah, I loved it. Similar to SpaceX, had the great fortune to work with just some excellent operators. Worked very closely with the co-founding team there, and had learned just an enormous amount from them on how to build a business at SpaceX. Is like how to lead a team and build something from the ground up, and had some of that similarly at Anduril, but really it was about the sort of business building and culture and all that, and those guys are excellent at what they do. I started a little bit after, right around when the company was transitioning to more of a more production programs, going from sort of R&D to there's some R&D stuff still happening, obviously, but like they were sort of moving into more production scale programs, and so had the good fortune to build out the manufacturing, engineering, and quality, and parts of the supply chain teams, as well as the production, like on the floor, operations. And I'd done a bunch of like more hardcore mechanical stuff at SpaceX, so like welding and metal forming and all that. And Anduril was a ton more of the electronics, manufacturing side, and learned a ton from the engineering team there. It was a great experience. Yeah, I was there for three and some odd years, and learned a ton.
What's your single biggest takeaway?
I think it was a reinforcement of what I had learned at SpaceX, which is that culture is everything. Like the talent and culture is downstream of talent, and talent is upstream of everything else. And so it's extremely important who you hire and who you bring into the company, and sort of how you spend your time in that part of the world dictates how the rest of it goes.
Are we still in the industrial era, like 9 to 5 routine culture, or is that like at some of these companies you've described, obviously we've moved way beyond that. Everybody has like different expectations, but different archetypes just like function well differently. I think you mentioned like some roles you can be like, you have to be you can be ambiguous with people and they thrive in those, and there's different fits for people and for them to thrive and be at their best.
Yeah.
How do you manage that?
Yeah, I mean, you want to have a culture that is relatively consistent, meaning like everyone is marching towards the same goals.
Right.
They operate in mostly the same way, et cetera. But humans are not all the same. Stating the obvious here.
Right.
And so enabling people, especially leaders, sub-team leaders, small and large team leaders, to develop a culture for their team is very important. And we honestly kind of run somewhat of an
rogue
experiment.
Operation.
Yeah,
right.
we run a bit of an experiment, which is
right.
like, one group, our leader on one of the engineering teams versus the other, they manage their teams quite a bit differently.
Right.
And they learn from each other. And we try to have forums and opportunities for them to sort of share how they lead and manage and all that. So I also, by the way, should probably get going here.
Yeah, I know. Okay. Well, just tell me more about what you're excited about. What's next for Base?
Yeah.
Base Power. Yeah, what's next?
Yeah, continuing to do more and more of what we're already doing, which is designing, manufacturing, and installing batteries on homes. We're doing that in more homes in the existing markets that we have, and more markets with more utility partners. That's number one. Number two is the factory we have here in town in the old Austin American Statesman printing press on Congress, right off the Congress Bridge. Ramping that up is a humongous challenge, and we're both hiring for and continuing to expand that facility quite meaningfully. And then start to work on new products. We've got a bunch of ideas in the hopper that we think are meaningfully important for the grid, and will enable the ability to generate, move, and store and sell power, and in what needs to support the AI revolution and EVs and all the like. So continue to do more of what we're doing, new products, continuing to hire and expanding even further outside of Texas.
Right, Justin, thanks for coming on the show.
Great, thank you.